second reading, St. Paul says something that's very interesting and also somewhat controversial. And he says that an unmarried man, and he also says an unmarried woman, is anxious about the things of the Lord. So those who are not married are anxious, are able to concern themselves, first and foremost, with what it is that God is needing in the world. St. Paul goes on to say, a married man and woman are anxious about the things of the world. A married man and a married woman are anxious about the things of the world. And that actually makes sense. It makes sense. When you're married, you are trying to, your attention, so much of your attention is focused on making things work right now. Making the marriage work, if there's children, helping raise the children, and doing all of this stuff, and it takes a ton of energy. And St. Paul's acknowledging that. He's not saying, that it's bad. He's just saying, he's acknowledging the fact that if you're not married, you have more time to be able to devote to worrying about and trying to do the things that God is asking of us. Not that God is not asking married couples to do anything, or not to say that's not at all what St. Paul's saying, that marriage is somehow not good or not holy. The reason that I bring that up is that really hits on a really key teaching of the church. And it's really relevant to us right now, because you may have heard or you may have not heard, but we are celebrating that this year in our Catholic Church, the year of consecrated life. The year of consecrated life. And that is, we had a few years ago the year of the priesthood, and then we've had the year of the Eucharist and the year of faith, all these different things where the Holy Father has said, this year we're going to focus on that particular topic. And this year, Pope Francis has said, this is a year where we are going to focus on consecrated life, on religious life. Now, what does that mean? We hear that, what does it mean to be a religious life? Are there people who are not religious, And so consecrate, when we talk about consecrated life, to consecrate something means to set it apart. So it's been set apart by God. So a consecrated life is a person whose life has been set apart for a particular mission of God. And so that might be a mission of teaching. It might be a mission of caring for the sick, like Mother Teresa did and her sisters have done. We have consecrated women who live over in Terre Haute at the Carmelite monastery. Their particular mission, the thing that they've been set apart for and consecrated for, is particularly devoted to a life of prayer for all of us. So we have all of these different orders, all of these Franciscans and Dominicans and Capuchins and Redemptorists, and literally thousands of orders of groups of men and women who've been set apart, who've been consecrated in a special way through vows of chastity, obedience, and poverty. And they've decided and have said and have vowed their life to live apart from the world and to live apart so that they can come and help and contribute in that particular way through that mission that they have. And so Pope Francis is asking us to remember that and to celebrate that in a special way. Now, here's where St. Paul's thing comes in, because he's talking about religious life. The church says something that might sound controversial about consecrated men and women. It says that the vocation to consecrated life is superior to marriage and diocesan priesthood. The call to consecrated life, so to be a religious brother or a religious sister, is more intimate with Christ and is superior. It's a superior call than that of marriage and that of the call that I've been given as a diocesan priest. Now, immediately, anytime we hear that word, we might want to put our hands up and say, let's fight. That's crazy. Are you saying that, our vocations are unworthy or aren't good or are, whatever it might be? And it's really important, I think, in this year of consecrated life that we understand what we are actually saying. When St. Paul lays out his teaching, he's saying an unmarried man is anxious about the things of the world. A married man is anxious about the things of the world. What he's saying, he's not putting down marriage. And he's not putting down diocesan priesthood, priests like myself working in parishes who aren't living out in that particular way consecrated life. He's not putting that down, but he is calling attention to the fact that for those men and women who live a consecrated life, they are closer to heaven by the very fact of their consecration, by the very fact of the way they live their life. Because they are rooted in prayer, because they are free to be concerned so much of the day with what it is that God's asking them to do, they're committed and able to spend so much of the day being anxious about the things of the Lord, as St. Paul says, that they are able to be closer to heaven through their particular vocation. St. Paul is simply acknowledging that fact without in any way putting down my vocation or the vocation that any of you have as married men and women. And I think it's good for us to reflect on that. It is good for us to reflect on the awesomeness of consecrated life, of the men and women who've been set apart for these particular missions in the church as brothers and sisters in all of the varied types of vocations that they have. That's what St. Paul is calling our attention to. And so I was thinking about the fact that sometimes we hear people say things like, wow, that person, I've heard people say to me, that those monks, what a waste. What a waste that we have men sitting over in a monastery, spending time in prayer when they could be out pastoring parishes. So, for example, I've heard it said about the monks at St. Meinrad where I studied. And at St. Meinrad, on a given Sunday, there might be 40 priests there who are serving and who are all celebrating Mass, and another 30 brothers or something like that at St. Meinrad, right? We can say, well, each of those 40 priests could be out in a parish. What a waste. They could all be out helping Father Hollowell not have 5 Masses this weekend. Why are they? We got 40 of them. What an excess. Get out and do something, monks. We hear that about sometimes about religious sisters too. Oh, those women locked away in Carmel at the Carmelite monastery in Terre Haute. What a waste. They could be out bandaging wounds and working with the poor and doing all of these sorts of things. What a waste. We hear that about the priesthood too, as well. What a waste. Could be out being married. That man could be out and being a father of children and so forth. We hear that about vocations, and vocations are often put down. And in reality, though, what we have to realize is that the consecrated life is a great life. And in fact, St. Paul is calling us to understand that it's actually closer to heaven because they don't have to be so much concerned with the things of the world. Because they're set apart, they're able to minister to the world in a way that people who are living in the world can't do it as well and can't do it as easily. The other thing then I'll say in closing is that one recognition that I've come to realize, or one of the things I've come to realize, is that all of them, consecrated life, diocesan priesthood, and marriage, whatever it is, all 3 types of vocations are hard. They're hard. I was on retreat, as I said, during Advent, and it was empty. I was by myself, and it was terrifying to spend time away with God. And I didn't want to do it. And there was a part of me in every bone of my body that wanted to do anything else but sit with God in prayer. Oh, there's a magazine. Oh, I'll go read that because that's better than prayer. Because I'm afraid of prayer and I'm afraid of what I might find. It's hard. So consecrated life, when we see consecrated life, we might look at that and we might say, oh, what a waste. Those women are praying 4 hours a day at the Carmelite monastery. What a waste. Well, what we have to realize is, in fact, they're doing tremendously difficult things by spending time in prayer for us, and it's very hard. And we need to respect that and recognize that God has called them to that, and they're praying for us. And they're doing something that's both extremely difficult, because if you've ever tried to pray for more than 10 minutes, you know what it means to pray for 4 hours, and how awesome, but also how hard that is. Diocesan priesthood is also a challenge. It's a challenge because we have to go back and forth between the world and the anxieties of the Lord. So one minute it's like, okay, go anoint this person and say Mass for these people and do this thing and that thing, and then go over here and be quiet again. Have you ever tried to run really fast and then sit down and stop and try and calm yourself and then run again? That's diocesan priesthood. It's a challenge for us to spend time with God because we're having to go back and forth. And for married people, it's also really hard. Spending that time in prayer is hard because, again, as St. Paul says, there's so much that you are pulled into in the world that you have to do. And so I know a lot of married people who finding 15 minutes of prayer time a day is an amazing accomplishment. Kids running everywhere, all these things to do, all these tasks, my job or the jobs that our family has to take on. What we can definitely take away from St. Paul is the understanding that God in no way, and St. Paul in no way, is putting down marriage. And in no way is he putting down diocesan priesthood and lifting up consecrated life and saying it's a great thing. I think in many families, probably the number one thing that discourages people from pursuing consecrated life, pursuing being a brother or a sister, is their family putting it down and saying it's a waste. And oftentimes, in fact, it's actually Catholic families, great Catholic families, who believe that and perpetuate that about either the priesthood or consecrated life. And so I think this year of consecrated life is good for us to step back and say, A, we need to be aware that our consecrated men and women, our religious brothers and sisters, are out there doing amazing things for us. And they're praying for us, and that's hugely important, and we need that. And thus we can, in this year, hopefully draw to a deeper appreciation for them and thank God for them and pray for them in their ministry and in their struggles each day. And thank God and be thankful for them instead of thinking it's a waste. And then finally, I think in this year of consecrated life, hopefully we can recognize that God is calling some of us to consecrated life, to be religious brothers and sisters, and that's an amazing call. And it's a great grace, just as every call that comes from God. Maybe we be a community who nourishes all of the different types of things that God calls all of us to. May we support the people who are called in every way that God calls them. And may we grow into a deeper appreciation and a deeper feeling of thanks towards our men and women who have stepped up and have heeded the call to live out a consecrated life and to serve the rest of us by stepping aside from the world and first and foremost living in God.